Today we're working on a Subnautica cake. It's a half sheet cake with a 6x4 base and a 5x5 life pod. So we've taken an 8-inch single layer cake and cut it into a square. Here I'm just trimming off the edges, smoothing it out to give us more of a rounded look, because it's that little flotation device that's underneath the life pod. You want to get all your crumbs off of there. And then we're going to crumb coat this. And the whole purpose of a crumb coat is to, pick up those crumbs, kind of keep them pressed onto the cake, but it also helps the base icing to stick to the cake, because you'll see where these open areas of cake are, where you've just cut, it's really hard to get that frosting to stick in there. So we trim it up, and now we're just putting icing on. I'm going to show you a couple different ways. This way, I'm going to put on a lot of frosting and then pull it back off. And I'll just save that pulled off frosting and use it when I'm filling a cake or whatever. The other way is just to add just a minimal amount and just leave a thin layer. Both ways are good. Sometimes I prefer this way. It just is a little easier to just get it pressed on there. All right, now we're starting this life pod. This is our 5-inch cake. We're gonna fill it and then trim it up to get it rounded out to the shape that we need. Filling in that void that's between the two. And you're just trying to get those sharp edges off of there. It makes it so much easier when you're smoothing out the icing to get a really nice, smooth, round on your cake. Okay, now this is that thin crumb coat I was just telling you about. You really don't need a lot, so you can do it either way, whatever works for you. It's just mainly to get all those crumbs up. Now we're going to take these and we're going to put them in the freezer for about 10 minutes or longer. You can just let them sit. Okay, now we are going to work on, this is a new trick for me. We're going to cut the shapes that we need out of this frosting. So I just do the frosting in a square as thick as I need it. So you need to keep that in mind. How thick do I need this to be? If you want it super thin, do it super thin here. We're going to freeze this and then cut out the shapes that we need. And this makes it so that we've got the exact same size. These are for like the little windows that are on that life pod. And that way they're all the exact same size and the exact same thickness. You can do this like with dinosaurs. If you want the dinosaur shapes, you just use cookie cutters and cut the shape. I'm also making some sea creatures, jellyfish, that I want to stick out from the cake, and that's what you saw there. Okay, we're using our edger tip and we're doing our half sheet. You just lay that edger tip right on that board and just go right along the edges. Fill in your middle. Get it smoothed out. We're going to take the comb and do the sides. Now the first time I just do it straight. I'm just trying to adhere the frosting to it. Not worried about it being exactly. Now I'm going to take that comb again and do a wavy line just to kind of give the extra thing of water. We're going to rough up the top of it so it looks like waves. Then we're going to airbrush this. And I'm going to kind of, I'll do it darker, do an ombre, darker at the bottom and lighter as it comes up. Do kind of muddled on the top, so some parts of it are lighter and some parts of it are darker. Just gives you the feel of water. I love airbrushes for this. It's so much quicker. Now I'm putting some graham cracker crumb just along the bottom to give that sand, that bottom of the ocean feel. Okay, so now we're going to base ice our flotation device. I've cut a board to the size that I need, and I put a little frosting just to glue it so that it'll stick to this, because this is frozen now. And now we're just going to go through and re-ice this. This is our final coat for this. And I'm using an acetate strip to kind of get those those smooth edges that I want, those rounded edges, to get them even more rounded. It's much easier than using the regular knives for this. And you don't even have to get this perfect, because I'm going to show you another tip later on smoothing this out. Once buttercream crusts up, you can use a paper towel to go over and smooth out the extra palette lines and to push down. So like these indents that I'm doing with that knife there just a second ago, you'll be able to use your finger to make that indent even deeper because the buttercream is crusted up. It's one of my favorite tips. I use that all the time. Because that way you don't have to fight with making that base ice perfect. Okay, so now we're doing our life pod, just using our cobbler tip, spinning the wheel and going around with the bag. That's a 5-inch angled spatula that I'm using. Be sure to get that bottom like that. That really helps with that roundness. And again, I'm using the acetate strip. You can also use just a piece of wax paper, cut it into a strip. I like smaller strips. Some decorators use longer strips. Do whatever works for you. And you're just gently pulling over it. Okay, there's that paper towel I was telling you about. This is crusted up now, so I can just play. Now see where it stuck a little? That's where the frosting's still just a little bit too wet. You can test it. If it's too wet, then don't do it. Let it sit for a little bit longer. That's kind of why I'm flipping back and forth between projects, is because some things need to sit for a few minutes, some things need to freeze. Okay, now we're doing our lines. We've just got a basket weave tip, and we're using the smooth side to do our binders on this flotation device. That's a number 3 tip that I was using for the yellow. Just outlining it. And these don't have to be perfect because it's going to have that life pot on top of it. I kind of wish I would have been a little bit more careful. But I work in a grocery store and we're really only allowed a certain amount of time on these things. Okay. So now we're going to put that life pod on top. Da, da, da. I'm not worrying about doing any supports because this cake isn't really that heavy. Okay, now I'm using a large basket weave tip, again, with the smooth side out, and just creating that bottom part of the life pod. I'll show you that picture that I'm using here in a few minutes. There it is. I usually use pictures, something for inspiration, even when it's something that I've done over and over, or something that I know, like, say Mickey Mouse or whatever. I've seen that picture 10 million times. I need to have a picture to look at while I'm working. All right, we're just lining out all the different parts and pieces. I like to outline it too. It really adds detail to it. Now we're doing some more plants and sea life. I'm just using a leaf tip. Oh, no. I'm using the number 3 tip. We're drawing out the weird seaweeds. Now, I went and found pictures of the different plant life and the different fish that were popular for Subnautica. And these were the ones that I found the most. Now we're just doing different kinds of sea life. All I'm doing is little circles and coming up. There's that picture that I used. I found the most basic one I could. Sometimes I'll look up coloring pages. So, if it's a dog or whatever, I'll do coloring pages. Okay, so here we're doing that fish with the big eye. And I'm just doing the body part of it. We're going to let it sit and crust up. And then we'll come back and tap it down with a clean finger, of course. Doing some of the boomerang fish. Those 2 are the most popular that I could find. Now we're doing his fins. And again, we're just going to let him sit so it crusts up. Sometimes it's better to do these in different steps. Let it crust, tap it down, do the next piece. It just helps keep it more crisp, so to speak. Okay, now we're putting in the supports. I just use straws. I push it in until I get to the top of the frosting, pull it up just a little bit, tap it back down. I'm putting in 5 supports for this cake. When it's a little high, you just pull it up with the scissors, and then you just drop it on. Ta-da! Okay, we've still got more work, but it's getting there. Okay, now we're gonna make those pieces. This buttercream has been frozen, and so now we can just cut this out, and they're all gonna be the same size, the same thickness, and that really adds, that really helps those small details. So we need 5 of those, and we just cut them out. You can do this with dinosaurs, with whatever. This is like one of my new favorite tips. Okay, and all you have to do is place it on there. Now work with these when they're frozen. Don't let them set out at all, because they soften up really darn quick. But once you get them on there and attached, they're fine. They're perfect. Every now and then I have to put a dollop of frosting underneath them, but not often. Usually by the time you've gotten them cut and stuff, the warmth of your hand has softened it up just enough that you don't need to. All right, so we get all of our, I don't know what those are, windows, hatches, whatever they are. All right, tapping down some of the fish, just kind of cleaning up the messy spots where they are. Okay, now we're gonna go back and do that big eyeball. And again, we're gonna let it crust up, and then we'll tap it down, and we'll do the pupil on it. And that way it doesn't get misshapen when you're doing the tap down. And when you're doing that tap down, just very gentle. It's very gentle touching it. So but you just put your eyeballs on, you go do another thing, you come back and tap it down. Now I'm doing the strings on that jellyfish. It was just one of the fish I saw in there. I couldn't find the picture I was using for it though, sorry. Now we're doing the ladder going up to the top hatch. Sorry, I didn't get a better view of this part where it's the top hatch. You'll see a better, see there, a little bit better view of it now. My writing on this one I wasn't happy with, but usually you're the only one that sees your mistakes. The customer was absolutely thrilled with this cake. Me, I can see it. His name was Everett, so I put that on there. And I didn't get a picture of it, but when they showed up, I asked how old he was turning, and I put his age on the other side. Now I'm going to put in the waves. I've just striped that bag. You put half of it with white and half of it with blue so that it would both come out together. It's a star tip. And this helps cover up your board and just adds a cool little detail. I'm just using little white lines along some of those higher spots to create more waves. All right, now we're doing the writing. People really love the double writing, so I'm going to go over this orange with yellow as soon as I'm done. So there it is. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.